Okay, you've seen them literally everywhere, right? Spinners, cubes, little popper things. They're on office desks, in classrooms, all over the place. Fidget toys have absolutely exploded, going from this niche tool to a massive global craze. But what's the real story behind them? Let's dive in and look at the science. So that's the big question we're tackling today. Are these things a genuinely helpful tool for focus and anxiety, or are they just a kind of harmless trend that'll fade away? We're going to look at the claims, the evidence, and what it all really means. All right, first up, let's talk about the craze itself. Before we get into the science, what exactly are we talking about when we say fidget toy? So the key phrase here is self-regulatory tools. That's super important. These aren't being sold as just simple toys. The whole idea is that by doing these little repetitive actions, clicking, spinning, rolling, these gadgets can help you manage your own focus and your own tension. And that brings us right to the number one claim you hear about them. Can they actually help you focus? This is a huge, huge part of their appeal, especially for people with ADHD, with the promise that they can help you concentrate on a task. And there's some pretty strong support for this idea. Organizations like CHAD, which is a major advocacy group for children and adults with ADHD, say that the simple act of fidgeting can be a totally legitimate way to focus. This belief is really widespread, and you'll hear it from tons of people who swear by these things. So the personal stories, the anecdotal support, it's definitely strong. But what happens when we put it to the test? What does the scientific evidence actually have to say about it? And this is where we see a major disconnect. While so many people believe they work, the scientific research is, it's pretty weak. There's actually very little hard evidence to back up the claims. And get this, some studies even suggest that fidget toys might hurt your attention levels. So it's a really stark contrast. If you look at some recent studies from 2022, you can really see how messy the data is. So one study found that for 7 and 8-year-olds with ADHD, the toys did increase on-task behavior, which basically means they were sitting still more. But, and this is a huge but, the researchers had no way of knowing if the kids were actually concentrating any better, right? Just because someone is sitting still doesn't mean their mind is focused. And then, to make things even more confusing, another study on slightly older kids found the toys made no difference at all. The results are just all over the map. Okay, so the evidence for helping with focus is shaky, to say the least. But what about the other big claim? Can fidget toys help with anxiety? And just like with the focus claim, the personal stories here are really powerful. So many people will tell you that these toys give them a physical anchor, something to ground them and distract their mind when those feelings of anxiety start to creep in. But you can probably guess what's coming. When we look at the science, it tells a different story. There just isn't enough evidence to prove it. Now, here's the important part. While science can't prove they work for anxiety, there's no real harm in trying one out. They're cheap, they're low risk, and that's a huge part of their appeal. So, let's say all of this has you curious. The science might be iffy, but they're low risk and a lot of people love them. If you're thinking about trying one, how do you even choose the right one for you? Well, there are pretty much 3 key things to think about. First off, your environment. A noisy, clicky toy is probably not going to go over well in a quiet office or a library, right? So go for something silent. Second, safety is a big one. Especially for young kids, you have to avoid anything with small, detachable parts. And third, and this is so important, keep it simple. The fidget toy shouldn't be more interesting or require more focus than the actual thing you're supposed to be doing. And wow, the options out there are just incredible. This chart here just gives you a little snapshot. You've got the classic fidget cube with all its different buttons and switches. Then you have something like the Ono roller, which is completely silent, perfect for an office. There's sensory putty, which is great for older kids. And there are even things like these silent rubber bands that you can stretch around the legs of a chair for kids who need to fidget with their feet in class. There's truly a fidget tool for just about everyone. All right, we've gone through the claims, we've looked at the science, we've checked out the options. So after all that, what's the bottom line? When it comes right down to it, the hard scientific evidence to back up those big claims about focus and anxiety, it's just not there. It's limited, and it's pretty mixed. But, and this is the real takeaway, that doesn't erase the fact that a lot of people genuinely find them helpful. And because they're so cheap and safe, they're this popular tool that seems to work for some people, even if we can't exactly explain why. And that leaves us with one last kind of fascinating question to think about. For generations, fidgeting was seen as this bad habit, right? It was disrespectful. Maybe the real power of these toys isn't the plastic or the metal itself. Maybe the real benefit is that they've finally given us social permission to do something our bodies might have needed to do all along. Something to chew on. Thanks for watching.